Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. Today I would like to explain and present one of the textbook from my textbook review assignment. The book that I choose is Vocabulary Writing in the First and Second Language, written by Dorothy Albertson, so Kirsten Hastrup and Birgit Henriksen, and published by Palgrave Macmillan in 2008. So, this book mainly discusses the relationship between vocabulary mastery and writing ability in both first language or L1 and second language or L2. So, the authors explain that vocabulary is not only about memorizing words, but also about how learners understand, organize, and use words effectively in communication and writing. So, in this presentation, I will explain the main contents of the book, including the important chapters, the main findings, and also my personal opinion about the book. So, in chapter 1, the authors explain the background and objective of the research. So, they emphasize that language skills are interconnect, and vocabulary, reading, inferencing, and writing cannot be separated from one another. According to the authors, learners with stronger vocabulary knowledge usually produce better writing. So, the books also explain that many previous studies focus only on grammar or writing structure, but this book focuses more on the role of vocabulary in improving writing performance. The participants of the study were Danish students from different educational levels. Through this research, the author wanted to investigate how vocabulary knowledge affects writing ability in both native language and second language learning. So, in chapter 2, chapter 2 explains how words are stored and organized in human mind. The authors say that vocabulary knowledge is not only about knowing the meaning of words, but also understanding their forms, usage, and relationship with other words. For example, when learners know the word happy, they may also connect it with words like joyful, excited, or cheerful. This connection is called a lexical network. So, the author also explained that vocabulary size is important because learners with wider vocabulary knowledge can understand text more easily and express ideas more clearly. And besides that, this chapter introduces several methods to measure vocabulary knowledge, such as vocabulary tests and word association tasks. In my opinion, this chapter is very important because many students focus too much on grammar but forget that vocabulary is the foundation of communication. Without enough vocabulary, students will struggle to speak, read, or write effectively. So, in chapter 3, or lexical inferencing procedures, this chapter discuss lexical. In here, lexical inferencing means the ability to guess the meaning of unfamiliar word while reading. The author explained that learners usually use several strategies for inferencing, and for example, they use context clues, previous knowledge, and word structure analysis. For instance, if students read a sentence containing an unfamiliar word, they can predict the meaning based on the surrounding sentence. This skill is very important because learners can always use dictionaries every time. they find difficult words. So this research, the research finding show that intrinsic skill are used in both first language and second language learning. Although second language learners often experience more difficulties because of limited vocabulary. I think this chapter is very useful for English learners because it encourages students to become more independent readers. So we go to chapter 4. This chapter explains that writing is a complex process involving planning, organizing ideas, drafting, and revising. So the authors compare writing in first language and second language. Writing in first language is usually more fluent because learners already master the vocabulary and grammar naturally. So, meanwhile, writing in second language is more difficult because learners need to think about vocabulary choice, grammar accuracy, and idea organization at the same time. So, the author also explained that vocabulary knowledge strongly influences writing quality. Students with limited vocabulary tend to produce simpler and less detailed writing. I personally agree with this point because many students actually have good ideas because they cannot express those ideas clearly due to time vocabulary. So, due to limited vocabulary. So, lexical knowledge or chapter 5. This chapter explains the relationship between lexical knowledge, inferencing skills, and writing ability. The main finding is that learners with richer vocabulary and better inferencing skills usually produce higher quality writing. This means vocabulary development directly contribute to writing improvement. So, the chapter also highlights that language skills support one another. Reading improve vocabulary, so vocabulary support writing, and inferencing help learners acquire new vocabulary. According to me, this is one of the strongest points of the book because it shows that language learning should be integrated, not spared into isolated skills. So, chapter 6. We go to chapter 6. The authors recommend that language teaching should be place greater emphasis on vocabulary development and learning strategies. Teachers should not only teach grammar rules but also help students with vocabulary through meaningful activities such as reading, discussion, and writing practice. So, in my opinion, this recommendation is highly relevant for English education in Indonesia.